ladies, gentlemen, unicorns, and other blockchain enthusiasts out there. Welcome to the seventh and exceptional episode of Stakin podcast. My name is Robert Del Rey, and today we are sitting down with none other than Gregory Landua, co-founder of Regen Network. Welcome to the podcast, Gregory.
Robert, it's great to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it, right? Before we get started into Regen Network itself, I'm aware that you have quite some experience in ecological field, finance, blockchain, and more. Could you tell us a bit more about your journey so far?
Sure. Yeah. So before diving all the way into the Web3 world and founding Regen Network, I was focused on helping support the development of regenerative supply for companies that wanted to be able to have positive climate impact with their ingredient sourcing. So I actually was working a lot with smallholder cacao farmers in Latin America. And the businesses, sort of like the supply chain that went from those origins to consumers. And a lot of that experience led me to be very enthusiastic about Web3 because it's a world in which there's a lot of opacity, there's a lot of corruption, and it's really hard to assemble all of the good intentions of the actors, whether it's a smallholder farmer or a brand or a consumer that wants to have fair trade or organic chocolate or coffee or something like that. We still struggle to get that right as a society because of the incentives and because of the game theory and because of the lack of transparency. And so that's a big part of, as I started to see the potential of blockchain in those early days to create kind of a common public infrastructure where everybody who is participating in that economy has equal footing around what's true and what's not true and who can make what claims. And so Regen Network was really sort of emerged out of that experience very directly and kind of asking the question, what would it look like for bankers and brands to be on equal footing with a smallholder, campesino, cacao farmer, and maybe scientists? Like, what does it look like for everybody to just have equal footing in a system, in which we're really trying to achieve kind of a common aim, which is a healthier, ecosystem or a healthier planet?
Right. Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And just curious, Gregory, can you mention some of the countries that you visited doing that?
Sure. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in Latin America. Probably the country that I worked in the most was Ecuador. I worked in Peru, in Colombia, Nicaragua, Costa Rica.
Wow.
Yeah, Brazil a little, but not as much. Mostly the Spanish-speaking countries. Yeah.
Okay. Well, got it.
And also in Southeast Asia, a little bit, Thailand, Vietnam, but mostly in Latin America.
Wow. Never been to any of those places. Looking forward maybe to go there one day. I do have like a goal to explore a whole Latin, South America, Central America, and get to know more about them. Right? I am from the Dominican Republic, just so you know a little more about me. And yeah, I do think that crypto and blockchain technology will empower a lot of the Latin American people. Just
yeah,
in the
definitely.
way it works.
I definitely agree. It's such a dynamic and exciting part of the world. My wife is actually from the DR, so
yeah, that's crazy. Thanks for sharing that. So, Gregory, moving on, and each episode, we would like to start off by asking you, the guest, to describe your project like I'm five, right? So for a minute, let's assume that I don't know anything about Regen Network. Can you tell me more about what Regen is and what makes it unique?
Sure. So what we're building is a system for people to be able to generate ecological credits. What does that mean? Well, that means that all real value on Earth is derived from the health of ecosystems, whether soil quality, health of biodiversity, water quality. This is the foundation of the entire human economy. But sometimes we forget about that. Regen Network is built to allow people to remember that and to express that value and make agreements about that value so that it doesn't get forgotten. And the basic building blocks of that are making it possible to have transparency around who is making what claim about what part of the earth using what data and what value has been generated, right? And that's what we would call minting an eco credit. And so an eco credit is minted that refers to a specific part of the earth with specific scientific data about what happened there. Is there a forest? Was it conserved or cut down? Is there soil? Is it healthier or less healthy than the last time we checked in? These sorts of basic kind of claims are baked into what an eco credit is. And then that eco credit is put onto the blockchain, and then it can be used. In the case of carbon credits, which is a lot of what we deal with, those carbon credits are minted, and then they can be used by companies or validators or blockchains in order to offset their carbon emissions, right? And so we're
Yes.
basically a carbon credit and other ecological credit minting machine. So we allow people to mint ecological credits that are grounded in real life place specific outcomes that are agreed upon by groups of people.
Awesome. So basically, you help these farmers to provide their land uh, as an ecological offset land, and you like connect these people with other institutions or individuals that want to offset their carbon footprint, right?
Exactly. And beyond. We also deal sort of beyond carbon with biodiversity and water. And so if there's you know, oftentimes in society, we all want a positive outcome. Like we want there to be clean, healthy water in our community. But it's hard to coordinate in order to get that outcome because you have lots of different landholders and maybe they're dumping chemicals or they're chopping down forests or they're doing things that decreases the water quality downstream. And so, that's it. And that's kind of the exact same example as climate change, right? Where we all want a stable, healthy climate, but
Mm-hmm.
individually, different businesses and individuals burn petroleum in order to get a little bit of money or whatever. And so we have a hard time coordinating around these big issues. We all want something that's positive to happen, but it's really hard to coordinate. And so Regen Network allows people to coordinate with ecological outcomes that everybody wants, but are hard to generate without some sort of infrastructure to account for whether or not something positive or negative happened in a specific place, right? And so we allow that value to be transparent and then to be valued by different stakeholders.
Awesome. I mean, for me, it's a super clever idea, and it's very unique. Regen is a very unique project, in my opinion. Just one last question about that because I'm really curious. These claims that any individual can make to the network to say like, hey, I have this, and people can use this to offset their carbon footprints. How do they make these claims, or better question, how does Regen verifies that these claims are valid or legit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So um, the high level is it's kind of complicated. The low level is I'll walk you through how it happens now versus how it's going to be evolving into the future because this is a system that's going to be continuing to improve itself. So
Of
at the
course.
moment, the way that this happens is that the community of Regen Network has the ability to assign a credit class administrator status to an entity that the community trusts, right? And so there's an organization that is able to grant issuer status to different other organizations. So it's kind of like a delegated trust model where the community has oversight, and if you were to break that trust, you could be your access to the market could be revoked, right?
Exactly. And
So,
eventually
so
get
that's,
kicked out
that's
of there.
exactly, you get kicked out. So that's how we start. And then eventually we want to evolve that to be permissionless so that anybody can mint an eco credit, but there's tools for those eco credits to basically apply to different community, like DAO governed standards, right? So that there can be multiple different approaches that are all coexisting at the same time instead of just a
All right.
single approach. So
Awesome.
that's how things are evolving. And then the second layer is, in order to mint an eco credit, you have to be giving information such as, what's the unit of account? Is it a ton of carbon, or is it a hectare of biodiversity preservation, or is it, water quality? You have to link to the data that's supporting the claim. And sort of like there's a whole set of rules about what needs to be shared in order to mint that credit. And all of that stuff
Okay.
has to be there. Otherwise, you can't mint the credit. You can't like leave a field blank, right? And so every
Okay.
credit
Okay.
has all of that information embedded in it. And that's basically a standard that all credit issuance has to achieve, no matter what.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That clears a lot to me, because I felt like maybe anybody could make a claim and that's it. But now you tell me that there is like a certain type of fields that people need to fill out in order to do a claim,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great, Gregory. Thank you for sharing that. And well, moving on a little bit, why did you decided to build Regen Network on Cosmos when there are so many L1s out there? I'm guessing that this is a question you get a lot, right?
Yeah, we get this a lot. I mean, Cosmos is unlike any other L1 in that
I think the same.
it's a completely different approach. And um, there's two core concepts to Cosmos that we think are really important for the Regen Network use case. So one is sovereignty, in which a community of actors has full governance capability over their state machine or their blockchain, right? And
Yeah.
this, I was explaining at the beginning of the call my time working with smallholder farmers and campesinos around Latin America. We really felt like we needed a system in which those voices of those specific actors were part of the governance of the trust system, not just an afterthought, not just users of somebody else's system, but really actually have meaningful stake, right? And the same is true with scientists, etc. Now, if you're using Ethereum or you're using Celo or Solana, you have a million different applications. You have DeFi applications, and you have art, and you have NFTs, and you have all these different interests that are governing those blockchains for their own financial gain. So we really felt like there needs to be a community that is really specifically built around ecological health and the empowerment of the community of land stewards and science and these like core tenets. You don't want people who have a bunch of other interests governing your blockchain and saying how it works and how it doesn't work and all those other things. So that's
Yeah.
what I would call sovereignty. You want a specific community of actors to have full control and sovereignty over the system. And then interoperability, on the other hand, which is also, you want to be able to interoperate with this whole world of NFTs and financial systems and all these other pieces. You just don't want it all boiled into one system. You want to be able to move those eco credits, in our case, over to Osmosis, or over to Umi, or over to Agoric, or over to Evmos, or over to Polygon, or over to Celo, or wherever they want to go. But in order to maintain quality and focus on how do you originate these ecological assets in the best possible way? And how do you ensure that all the stakeholders who need to be included in that process, like farmers, are included in it, not just an afterthought? We really felt like building a sovereign blockchain that's called Regen Ledger, that is the blockchain that ties together Regen Network, was really the best possible way to go in order to develop all of this. And we can interoperate with all of the other blockchains in the world, but this gives us a sovereign and clear space to concentrate on the functionality and the community that's focused on this specific use case.
Awesome. Really cool. Thanks, Greg. Now, before my next question, let me tell you a little background about me. I've been working for Stakin for a few months already. Like I said before, I've been in the Cosmos ecosystem since June or July 2021. I'm not sure about the month. I remember seeing Regen from back then. I know you are a core contributor for the Cosmos SDK. Also, Regen, it's considered like a Cosmos ecosystem OG by many. I don't know if you heard that. And well, I spent some time in your Discord, your Telegram, and something that stands out to me is that there are way less people talking about or speculating about the price, and more people actually talking about how can they use this network, how can
Yeah.
they offset their carbon footprint. And I think that's great. Also, you and your team, you are very passionate about what you do. So here's the question. Here's my question. Uh, can you tell me where this refi economy originated from, and what does this mean to you personally?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we oftentimes sort of say, our aim is to take crypto from degen to regen. And I think recent events with Terra and other things really show why, right? And so first, I'll just tell a quick story by way of context, and then I'll answer your question really directly. So, okay, so nature, the health of nature, the health of our world, carbon, water, biodiversity. I know that it's not commonly understood in the crypto space, but this is all going to be financialized. All of this value is going to be turned into dollars and cents in the economy. That's something that's going to happen. Carbon markets and other financial mechanisms. It's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry year on year. It's going to be a bigger industry even than space will be at 2050. You can imagine, like, all of the money and attention that Elon Musk gets for SpaceX and Tesla, the economy for life, for natural capital will be bigger, like twice as big. And that's projections by the World Bank and the IMF and World Economic Forum and, all of these people who are operating in the old paradigm of finance. Okay, so my question is, what happens if, like so many other parts of our economy, if there's a giant bubble? What happens if there's lots of shenanigans that happens in which speculators drive up the price of living systems and then make lots of money by shorting the whole thing because X, Y, or Z happened? And there's sort of like a subprime carbon collapse, like there was a subprime housing or mortgage collapse in 2008. What happens if or when that happens? Who's going to be injured, and what's the detriment? Well, in this case, it isn't just people who have, I think any collapse like that probably has unfortunate consequences for normal people. Maybe some of us who are listening suffered when Terra collapsed and our UST turned into nothing, right? So we're really motivated at Regen Network, the whole community, I think, by understanding that this financialization of living capital, of natural capital, is inevitable, but it needs to be done well. It's not just like an opportunity for profit, because we only really get one crack at, you know, incorporating the value of life into the human economy and the human sort of society. And if we don't do it well, right, we're kind of going off of a climate cliff. Environmental degradation and climate are big issues. And so, you know, what we're really focused on, and I think what regenerative finance needs to be focused on, refi needs to be focused
Hmm.
on, is ensuring that that there's direct payment to land stewards, that there's robust and quality verification, that there's governance around the system to ensure transparency and integrity and quality, instead of just going for pure speculative profit and fungibility and liquidity. Underneath
Exactly.
all of that, underneath that economy needs to be integrity, because otherwise it will all just sort of collapse in on itself. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, if you go into the Regen Discord and if you go in Regen Telegram, you do find a community that's talking about science, that's talking about land stewardship, that's talking about governance of the system, that's asking hard questions of one
Hmm.
another, and debating and thinking about all these things. And you don't really see anybody talking about the price of regen or the price of carbon or all these other things, because I think as a community, everybody understands that the market share is inevitable. We don't need to worry about
Exactly.
that. We don't need to stress about that. That's not something to stress out about. What we do need to ensure is that it's quality, and that it's community governed, and that it's buy-in for the right people, and it isn't just a big institutional, making rich people richer and not really doing anything at the end of the day. And that's what we talk about, is we talk about those things, those like pieces of content where there's room to disagree about how exactly to do that in the best possible way, but we really don't need to be distracted by short-termism in price, because again, it's inevitable that this is all going to be a huge economy. What's important is that we do it right, and that it's really
Exactly.
the right stakeholders who are part of it.
Awesome. Nail it there. Thank you so much, Gregory. Excellent answer. And thank you for sharing that with me again and also with the listeners. Uh, Moving on, you mentioned there are projects that users can finance to offset their carbon footprint. Can you mention more about these projects and where can I see more about them?
Yeah, so we're launching right now. If people would like to make bulk purchases of carbon, like if you're a validator like Stakin, or you're a network like Stargaze, like we recently offset Osmosis and Stargaze, and we're going to do this on the Cosmos Hub. So we're sort of like offsetting all of the infrastructure in the Cosmos ecosystem first, and then individual businesses. So you can just reach out to us and start that process. Coming very soon, there's going to be a slick, easy user interface that if you have Kepler, you'll be able to purchase and retire or do other things with carbon credits, which is very exciting. So we're using a standard called the Nature Carbon Ton that we helped co-develop with some other actors in the space. And yeah, there's also going to be a NCT Regen liquidity pool on Osmosis coming at some point soon. We've been postponing the launch of this because we want there to be a bridge that is robust enough and sort of like meets all of the stakeholder functionality. So it took us a little longer to get this all up and running than we had hoped, but it's coming very soon. So I think we're planning on having the bridge live for like fully liquid NCT, Nature Carbon Ton, probably in July. But we'll have the user interfaces for people to just do offsetting. Just like if all you want to do is offset, and you just want to be able
Hmm.
to purchase a carbon credit and offset your emissions from a flight, or offset your emissions as a validator, we'll have those user interfaces up and running, so it's really smooth and easy, a little bit earlier than the full bridge and the sort of like AMM integration with Osmosis.
Awesome. Great alpha there. Thank you for dropping that. Wow, Gregory, we're almost done with the podcast. I believe that the time has gone by really fast. Uh, Lots of good information and clarification there. Again, thank you for joining us in this podcast episode. So now, with the closing, uh, if somebody else wants to know more about what's coming with Regen Network, Regen Ledger, where can they go to get that information?
Well, regen.network is our website. I think regen_network on Twitter. And you can click through to Discord. There's always active conversations there about a lot of this stuff. You can click into Commonwealth where there's governance conversations if you want to get really geeky. But on Regen Network, you can see if you're technical, you can go to docs.regen.network. If you're more interested in the science side, you can go to library.regen.network. And you can just see the amazing work that's happening by a very large community of people who are committed to this sort of open source, community governed approach to carbon credits and other forms of ecological assets. So we'd love to have more engagement from more people. It's a very inviting community. So come and join us if you're interested.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And before we go, Gregory, do you have any final thoughts, any final words that you would like to share with us, the community?
Well, I think um, I do want to share that I do believe that IBC, the Interblockchain Communication Protocol, is a really important piece of infrastructure for the climate movement and for this refi space more broadly. And so why is that? That is because there's these core pillars of sovereignty and interoperability really unlock a lot of the challenges that the carbon industry is facing right now, right? It allows us to have strict and rigorous standards organizations interoperating with markets, right? You don't have to build everything on one chain to rule them all and make compromises there. We really can bake in sort of stringent, strict, open, transparent um, standards and also interoperate with DeFi and
Hmm.
have and unlock the potential of decentralized finance. And those two things can happen, but I don't think they can happen without IBC. I think IBC is really important. And so, for listeners out there who aren't already, sort of IBC maxis, which doesn't even mean you need to be a Cosmos maxi, right? There's nobody rent seeking off of IBC. IBC is an open source protocol to allow blockchains to communicate with one another. And so
Exactly.
the more that the community of blockchains more broadly understands the power that it is to sort of create that kind of open standard for communication, I think the more resilient and the better DeFi is, and the more that we're going to be able to ground DeFi into the real decentralization of human governance over these systems and empowerment of communities and life-changing engagement with this whole vision of an open financial system. So just like IBC maximalism is cooperative, you don't even have to, any other blockchain or layer one can start to move the direction towards IBC. So let's do it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, that is like the Cosmos motto that says, "Let's out collaborate the competition," and we can do that if we all connect with each other. I do think that IBC it's a hell of a innovation, and eventually all networks will use the IBC protocol to communicate with each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. So place your bets accordingly. And
All
and when
right.
I say bets, it's really the most precious thing for all of us is our attention. What are we paying attention to? It's not money. It's where are we putting our attention and our care? Where do we invest our time? Who are we investing our time into? And I
Exactly.
think investing time into projects and communities that are aiming for this out collaborate the competition open framework it just gives much bigger returns. So in all dimensions of what that means.
Absolutely, Gregory. Well, sir, with that, I believe that it would be enough to close this out. Once again, Gregory, thank you so much for joining this seventh episode of the Staking Podcast. Looking forward to collaborate more with you and just wish you the best to your project and your team. All right.
Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, and thanks to Stakin for this great opportunity.
You got it. See ya.